Let's now bring in Hassan Khannenje. He is the director of Horn International Institute for Strategic Studies and joins me live now from Nairobi. Thank you for being with us on the program. I mean, this is such a complex, multi-layered conflict that unfortunately goes unnoticed much of the time, and it's the innocent civilians paying the ultimate price. From a humanitarian perspective, how bad is the situation?
It is extremely tragic, actually. It's one of those what we see as increasingly forgotten conflict that is costing not just thousands, but potentially hundreds of thousands of people, not just being displaced, but really risking a real danger of rape and starvation as well as death. And I think to the extent that very little attention is being paid by the international community is extremely shocking and disturbing.
Experts, they often say that diplomacy is key for peace. What is it going to take in order for all parties to sit at the table and resolve this decades-long conflict once and for all?
As they say, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Now, one thing that was working a couple of years ago was a combination of the Nairobi process that was focusing on the security aspects in Eastern DRC, complemented by the Rwanda process that was focused on the diplomatic aspect, or at least negotiations. And so those two processes, to the extent that they died at some point, I think have contributed to the current situation. Now, what is going to take the current efforts by SADC as well as East African community to actually revitalize that process, I think is a step in the right direction. But this is not going to be sufficient in the absence of other stakeholders, as we have seen recent efforts, for instance, from Ankara to try and perhaps mediate. And so the regional effort supported by key international actors with an interest in ending the conflict is going to be critical in ending the conflict in Eastern DRC.
You mentioned the international community. What role do they have to play moving forward? Have they failed the people of the DRC so far, turning a blind eye to the atrocities that have been committed, according to the UN, by not only the rebels, but also by the Congolese soldiers and pro-government militias?
I think to say this has failed is probably an understatement. The DRC has been abandoned. And in part, because of what is going on, the geopolitics of the United Nations and the international community has led international institutions, dysfunctional. Now, the international community has a responsibility, because part of the reason you have the conflict in DRC is because of the interests, especially with regard to the rare earth minerals in DRC that are very critical to today's technology. And so the international community generally has a responsibility to be able to bring some order and some semblance of peace within the, not just Eastern DRC, but actually within the Great Lakes region. And so what we expect and look forward to is that both what is happening with regard to the regional initiatives and other efforts are going to be doubled to have a more robust and cohesive framework to be able to bring a peace to one of the largest countries on the continent.
Indeed. Hassan Khannenje, thank you so much for being with me here on the NewsHour. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.